And so when you kind of look at other parts of the crypto ecosystem, they're very speculation heavy. Even when you bring it back to the Bitcoin ecosystem, when you have things like fiat on-ramps and exchanges, they're still going to be somewhat speculation based, less so, some of it's saving, some of it's investing and speculating. But when you bring it all back to the Lightning Network, that's very, very utility focused. It's about payments, it's about infrastructure and things like that. And so I think that so far that the fact that it's been rather resilient is not that surprising. If you look back at, say, the 2008 crisis, for example, a lot of the companies that were growing that were later to become very big in the 2010s decade, a lot of them just kept growing from a small base through that difficult macro environment because it's the right product market fit. It's, people are buying things that are obviously better than what came before them. And I think we're seeing kind of similar things in some of the more utility focused aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem, which certainly includes Lightning.
Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, two of the more utility-oriented components of the Bitcoin ecosystem, have been in the spotlight for some time. Welcome back to Market Empire. Transaction times and fees on the Bitcoin network can be improved with a scaling solution called the Lightning Network. This video features Lyn Alden talking about the state of the economy as a whole and how it will affect new businesses, in particular Bitcoin startups. According to Lyn Alden, consumer prices have risen rapidly over the past 2 years due to massive stimulus and large monetary supply growth. The Federal Reserve is now attempting to withdraw some of the fiscal stimulus, signaling an economic slowdown. However, some of the constraints for the supply side to trigger inflation still exist. Despite the fact that Bitcoin companies may benefit from the flight to safety and stability, venture capitalist Lyn Alden predicts that 2023 will be a difficult year for startup fundraising. Despite the difficult macro environment and bear market in crypto and Bitcoin, Lightning companies have continued to grow. Lyn Alden thinks that this is why Bitcoin companies should receive more funding from VCs than their competitors. Stable coins, a type of cryptocurrency that are pegged to the value of a fiat currency or other asset like gold in order to reduce volatility and increase stability, are one such opportunity that Lyn Alden mentions is approaching in the Lightning Network. The tools necessary for businesses to test the market with stable coins on the Lightning Network have been developed, according to Lyn Alden, and are available from Lightning Network companies like Lightning Labs, Voltage, and Ombo Technologies. She goes on to say that the technology is useful regardless of the state of the crypto and Bitcoin market, and that the maturity of these tools means users will no longer need to understand the technical workings of the Lightning Network in order to use it.
So I think a narrative that we're seeing is that, during the whole kind of quote unquote Web3 thing that was happening, basically everything had a token associated with it. And basically that was just kind of like a lot of projects trying to get paid up front, whether or not the underlying project ends up delivering anything durable, basically fast. That's the ability to try to just have everybody do seigniorage. And what we're kind of seeing lately is the idea that a decentralized web is a good thing. It's just that you don't need your own token attached to it. So we've seen, you mentioned Nostr. There's also the whole Keat/tags, that vector. Yes. There's Web 5, right? There's multiple different kind of angles here. And, we'll see how some fit together or compete with each other over time. But the point is, it's just basically showing that when there's actually a good product market fit, the product sells itself. You don't need to add unnecessary gambling to it, try to get out of the position quicker. You're actually building something of value. And then the fact that there's this common money associated with it also allows for monetization in the normal way. Kind of like if you invent Uber app, you don't have to invent another one with its own money, right? Dollars are fine, or obviously, Lightning would be great, but basically you don't need to reinvent money every time you reinvent a new service. And I think we're seeing that play out in the kind of the Bitcoin focused, kind of decentralized web applications that have been gaining some momentum lately, right? So for example, all of us on this call, we have access to dollars. It's not really a problem for us. We can just do our normal day-to-day activities with dollars, and then we can save and use Bitcoin in however way we want, and it's fine with the volatility. But a common thing that comes up when you look at these small communities that are building out around the world, these little Bitcoin communities, a common thing that comes up is, hey, we need dollars too. And the ones that are doing it correctly, they acknowledge that their dollars are centralized. And the whole point is that the central hub is outside of their country. So for example, let's say you're in Argentina, I've seen it described as someone says, okay, I hold local currency for 1 month's worth of expenses. I hold, stable coins for several months worth of kind of intermediate term savings. And if I want to put savings away for years, I put it into something like Bitcoin. And from the perspective of, say, an Argentinian, they've had a history of, if you put dollars in the bank, they get confiscated. It's hard to get dollars. And so instead, what they do is say, okay, I'll hold dollars. They're centralized, but the central hub is outside of Argentina, right? So unless the United States goes after it, or unless there's fraud, there's counterparty risk, those are real risks to be concerned about. But the central hub is outside of that particular country. And so there is, so far, been a pretty strong demand for dollars by a number of people in emerging markets in these spaces. And basically the technology allows them to move around faster and in a more peer-to-peer way. And so far, they've kind of shifted around to different blockchains. So obviously they started on top of Bitcoin. A lot of them migrated over to Ethereum. That's mostly used for trading, right? Because it's higher fees, bigger amounts. Whereas a lot of the spending dollars moved over to Tron. And basically a lot of these spaces say, okay, I want to have stable coins, but I don't really want like another token associated with it. I don't, if I'm using a centralized stable coin, I don't need a whole nother centralized layer to deal with. And there are different alternatives for how to do that. There's the Caro proposal, which is basically the idea of running them over, using the edge liquidity of the Lightning Network to run them over. There's also, proposals like Peer Credit, which is basically using like a Lightning Light ledger that's not actually on Lightning to move around those dollars. And we'll see what kind of market things end up winning. But I think it's clear that there is a demand out there for dollars, at least as an intermediate term thing, because, not everybody can deal with 70-80% drawdowns on 100% of the money that they're using.
For a new digital bearer asset to be useful for payments and also to be an attractive store of value, it must be decentralized and permissionless. But if it operates on top of the fiat currency system or relies on external custodial arrangements at its core, it is neither. To create a decentralized Visa below that, you must first create a decentralized Fedwire, and along with that, you must first create a decentralized digital gold. This is because a significant portion of the population begins to persistently hold it as some percentage of their liquid net worth and be willing to accept it for goods and services. No other network can compete with Bitcoin's combination of decentralization, transparency, auditability, scarcity, and immutability in the form of Lightning as a payment, so it's difficult to conceive of a scenario in which Bitcoin fails. The network has matured to the point where it is both financially viable and practically applicable. Many cryptocurrencies that came after Bitcoin put the cart before the horse by prioritizing throughput and speed on their base layer, at the expense of decentralization, auditability, scarcity, and/or immutability of the underlying bearer asset. This led to their failure to gain structural adoption as money, which rendered their high throughput irrelevant. What are your thoughts on the Lightning Network? Leave a comment with your ideas below, and we appreciate you tuning in to Market Empire. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.